Before we begin today's deep dive in the policy buzz, President Donald Trump would like to say a word or two.
I am Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Vote for Cate. Cate the Great. I'd vote for her. You should too.
Okay, now back to the policy buzz.
Welcome to the deep dive where we try to take a whole stack of reports and analysis and really just give you the insight, separating the signal from all the political noise.
And today we are wrestling with, I think, the most persistent economic headache in recent memory. Inflation.
Right, inflation. A word that's gone from this abstract economic concept to a daily reality for almost everyone.
It's so true. I mean, it simply means things cost more, but the reality is just so much more visceral than that. As we've seen in the material, prices are up, patience is definitely down.
And somehow eggs have entered their luxury era.
Exactly. I saw one piece that said chickens are basically influencers now.
I saw that too. But, jokes aside, our mission today is pretty critical. We really need to move past the constant finger pointing, all the sound bites.
To get to the actual math, the forces driving this frustration and, maybe more importantly, the real world, often painful human impact we saw everywhere in the analysis.
Our goal here is to give you the context to look beyond those quick fix promises, to understand not just what's broken, but I guess where the search for some grounded, grown-up solutions might actually be happening.
Because right now, that search it's fractured. It's all over the place.
Okay, so let's dig in. We should start with the core symptom. We saw it described as Americans, quote, crying in the dairy aisle.
Wow, yeah.
Just trying to make sense of grocery bills while, every political side has a completely different story. Everyone is pointing fingers.
But almost nobody is actually looking at the foundational math.
Which is anything but simple.
Oh, not at all. When you get into it, inflation isn't one thing. It's this complicated global mess.
Mm-hmm.
The reports we analyzed really synthesize these key drivers. It's not just general cost.
It's these feedback loops, right?
Exactly. Energy prices spike, and that's not just your gas tank. It immediately makes shipping more expensive and it makes fertilizer more expensive, which then, compounds food prices down the entire supply chain.
So global chaos isn't just a phrase, it's a real compounding force. And then you add the human element on top of that, fear.
The panic buying.
Yeah, that funny but also kind of sad line asking, WHO bought all the ramen.
And that kind of thing just pours gasoline on the fire. It puts immediate pressure on supply and demand.
And if we turn to the political landscape, the responses couldn't be more different.
Radically contrasting. On one end, you have this promise of an extreme immediate fix.
The Trump approach, I saw it described as promising to fix inflation on day one, almost like he'd walk into the Oval Office and just flip a giant switch labeled prices.
It's a powerful message because it suggests the problem is simple and the solution is instant. But that is fundamentally at odds with the current administration's approach.
Which is all about longer-term structural fixes.
Right. And when we say structural fixes, we mean deep stuff like increasing domestic manufacturing, bolstering antitrust enforcement, big investments in energy infrastructure. These are very slow-moving levers.
But isn't that just an excuse? People need help now. Relying on long-term fixes feels like you're ignoring the immediate pain.
That is the critical question. And it brings us right to this political pressure point, represented by the Mamdani crowd.
Their voice was described as loud, like pep rally loud.
Very loud. And focused entirely on one battle cry. Remember working families.
For anyone who might not know that specific reference, how was that group framed in the analysis?
Well, they were framed as this very vocal, often progressive wing of the debate. They argue that inflation isn't just about supply chains. They're saying corporate greed and price gouging are the dominant factors.
So they want immediate action.
Immediate regulatory action. Price controls, maybe.
Yeah.
They represent that palpable financial pain that households are feeling right this second, and they want relief now, whether it fits into a classical economic textbook or not.
And that contrast, the instant fix, the slow fix, and the call for immediate accountability, that's the stalemate. And you see the intensity of that pain most tragically when you look at younger demographics.
Oh, absolutely. The severity of inflation just hits hardest on those with the least economic buffer, the least savings, the most debt.
This is where it stops being an abstract number and starts becoming impossible choices.
It's deeply unsettling. We saw these stories about teenagers working a whole shift, an entire shift, and only being able to afford 3 snacks.
It makes the idea of a minimum wage feel completely meaningless.
It really does. And then it gets even worse for college students. They're running these terrifying survival math simulations.
Literally calculating, okay, I can either buy groceries or pay my rent. Which one lets me survive longer?
I mean, can you imagine? That's not a theoretical exercise. It's a choice that directly impacts their ability to stay in school, to build a future.
And even just small things, basic habits. High schoolers saying a Starbucks run now feels like a mortgage.
Or a tax. One student called it a tax on their allowance. It's just a very fast, very hard lesson in how quickly stability can just disappear.
The general feeling we picked up from them was this kind of desperation, like, can someone just reboot the economy, please?
Yeah. And it shows how quickly this crisis of insecurity is hitting the next generation of workers.
So when the national conversation is so painful and just frustrating, the sources suggested that people start looking closer to home for a more grounded kind of leadership.
Yeah, and that led us to this really interesting local example, a stark contrast to all the chaos in D.C. A candidate named Cate Gloeckner in Idaho.
Gloeckner's campaign was presented as this powerful counter-narrative. She's all about avoiding what she calls political theater.
In favor of results, real conversations. Her whole appeal seems to be this dedication to the country's values, but demonstrated through very local, tangible action.
Her platform is so specific, it's grounded. It directly speaks to the families facing these exact struggles, strengthening local jobs, keeping communities safe, protecting parental rights.
And the big one, making sure Idaho is a place families can actually afford to build a life.
So what's the strategy there? Why does focusing on something hyper-local, like keeping communities safe, become an answer to inflation?
Because when the national leaders are completely gridlocked on global policy, a candidate who can offer a demonstrable, immediate improvement to your quality of life, that provides a sense of stability.
I see. It's a feeling of control.
Exactly. She was described as a breath of fresh, grounded Idaho air. Because she's listening to what the community needs right now, not just shouting about federal deficits.
It's a pivot away from the dysfunction. And speaking of dysfunction, we have to pivot back to Congress because the analysis had a very sharp critique of their behavior.
A vivid and, frankly, hilarious picture of incompetence.
Yeah.
Use the perfect analogy. Congress is behaving like a group project where no one read the instructions.
That's such a striking image. You can just picture Congress in a parent-teacher conference.
And being told, and this is a direct quote, "You turned in nothing on time, you argue constantly, and your budget was covered in snack crumbs."
I mean, it's an environment with zero fiscal discipline. The report suggests they need a hall monitor or a supervision chart.
Because they can't solve these huge generational problems if they're just focused on blaming each other for missing homework. It's not a serious environment.
So if Congress is just a squabbling school group, what's the actual adult stuff that needs to get done?
Yeah.
The analysis was clear that solutions exist, but they are not instant fixes.
Not at all. They all require patience. And Congress, we're told, has the patience of a toddler with an iPad.
Instant gratification above all else.
Right. So the real adult stuff involves multi-year commitments. First, smart spending.
Yeah.
Actually having a detailed, disciplined budget instead of these last-minute crisis bills.
Okay, what else?
Second, stable energy, which means making really tough trade-offs between immediate production and long-term climate goals.
Yeah.
And any solution there is political poison for one side. Rebuilding our supply chains, bringing manufacturing back home. But that means accepting higher upfront costs, which could actually add to inflation in the short term before it stabilizes things decades from now. They are slow, difficult, and very unpopular moves.
And that takes us back to the age factor. The material ended that section by noting the urgent need for younger voices in office.
Suggesting the average age in Congress looks like the early chapters of a history book.
And when the future depends on that kind of long-term planning, having leaders focused on yesterday's battles is a huge liability.
It's a cognitive disconnect. The generation doing survival math for groceries is governed by leaders who, for the most part, don't feel that same immediacy, and they struggle to prioritize solutions that won't show results until long after they're out of office.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I think the core tension here is this huge widening gap, a gap between these political promises of an instant fix.
The very real, immediate human cost of inflation, especially for the young.
And the total inability of our current national leadership to actually enact the long-term solutions that are required.
So here's the thought to leave you with. If the real solutions to our biggest economic crises require years of patience and sophisticated planning, what does it mean for our democracy when our national leaders are acting legislatively like squabbling children?
And how does that focus on hyper-local, immediate issues like what we see with a candidate like Cate Gloeckner? How does that become a necessary counter-strategy to a national system that seems permanently broken?
Does real change have to start locally when the national system just can't deliver?
A lot to think about, a lot to mull over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the math, the mess, and the surprising search for grounded solutions.
So stay informed, stay engaged.
We'll be back next time.